haven't been playing the sonata for 2 days, actually. I find when I'm getting near a performance and have practiced over a long period, things tend to get a bit stale if you keep on those only. Do you find that?
Yeah, and when you get back to it, you see other things in it?
You do, yes, if you leave it for a few days. I've been practicing some Brahms in the meantime.
That's a good idea. Miriam, as a woman in the composing field, have you come across any difficulties, or have you encountered any obstacles, or has it all been very smooth sailing?
I think in the earlier part of my life there was a considerable prejudice towards women composers, and the thought of having anything published with a woman's name seemed to daunt publishers. And I know when my very first little work was published, the Forest Echoes Suite, Alan seemed a little hesitant to go ahead and use my own name for it. I think perhaps they thought I ought to Russianize it or assume some male name, but anyway I stuck out for my own name, and of course that's what I have adhered to for the rest of my life. There was a story, and I only know this second hand. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you before, but I believe Margaret Sutherland found that obstacle. She was about to have something published until the publishers discovered it was Margaret Sutherland and not just M. Sutherland. Yes. I hadn't had quite that experience.
Right. And could you also tell us a little bit about the poetry you write?
I've been writing poetry since I was very young, really. I've got exercise books full of it, really, and I think the ones I have kept and actually written down would date from about 1929 or something like that, when I had been about 16. And it's something I've done all through my life. I've really got hundreds of them. The National Library in Canberra has about 7 large exercise books of them. I don't think for a moment there's a lot of literary merit in some of them, but I expect out of the number I've written some might be worth preserving. I've always hoped, of course, that someday there might even be a publication of at least a limited number of them. I find words, and in a poetic form, mean as much to me for expression as does music. And it seems to be a bit of a matter of chance whether my impressions get embodied in poetry or in music. And in the case of songs, I think there are only 2 of my songs in which the words and music came almost simultaneously. And they are Elfin Fantasy, which is for a coloratura soprano, and Thoughts at Dusk, which I wrote when Christine was quite a baby. But I've used my own words for quite a few of my songs, but sometimes years pass before I actually set them to music. And I think poetry has to be of a particular kind to be suitable for songs. It needs to be, I think, of a rather lyrical vein. I can't imagine setting some of my more philosophical poems to music. There doesn't seem to be the rhythmic resilience about them.
Right. And what writers, what other poets influenced you?
Well, I had a great diet of poetry when I was at school, and it's something I enjoyed very much, particularly in my very last year of school when I was 16 and had a teacher who was new to Riverside School and really awakened me to some of the beauties of poetry. I particularly loved Keats, Shelley, Shakespeare. I got to know Hamlet just about from A to Z. You'll find a number of quotations from Hamlet in my book. I'm sure to have seen it and The Merchant of Venice are about the only 2 Shakespearean plays I studied. I do have a smattering of some of the others. Milton we studied quite a lot. So I've solved a lot of poetry during that year, and I still know quite a lot of it from memory. It seemed to be part of learning poetry in that era at school, to memorize certain ones and to be able to quote from them. But I found when my daughter reached the higher stages of her education that she hardly ever memorized a poem. Didn't seem to be the same emphasis on that. And she would find it very difficult, I'm sure, to quote 10 lines from the poetry now.
And do you have any Australian poets or writers that you
I have an anthology of them, yes. I have read quite a number of them. I've read a lot, of course, of Judith Wright, who has a great reputation. I enjoy some of her poetry very much.
And what about anything else, like quilt making or sewing or anything like that?